morning. Oh, goodness. One of my earliest childhood memories is of a Sunday school class, a classroom. I can only remember a few things about it, like flashes of memory. But I can recall the wooden chairs, the kind that make you sit straight up. And I can recall the fading linoleum flooring and the sweet ladies handing out crayons and crackers and coloring sheets. I can remember the smell of that building, something musty and dusty like old books. And I can remember feeling happy there. There are many children's songs that I learned there, some that I bet you know as well. One that I remember most vividly, though, is the children's song called Rise and Shine. Anybody ever sing that when you were little? Rise and Shine was a simple story telling of the story of Noah and the flood. And through the sing-song, repetitive verses, the story is told, only to be interrupted after each verse with the chorus that went like this. Sing it with me if you know it. Rise and shine and give God the glory, glory. Rise and shine and give God the glory, glory. Rise and shine and give God the glory, glory, children of the Lord. What made that so fun and funny to sing was that I recall a group of boys that would make seemingly an instinctive noise on the clap. Let's say like a bathroom noise, if you will. Every time. Rise and shine. Every time. And it would make the teachers clutch their pearls, and it would make all of us double right over with laughter in those wooden chairs. This children's version perhaps tells the basic outline of the flood story, but it leaves out quite a bit too. In our series, But First, Let Me Take a Selfie, we are looking back to our past to find our present and our future. We are looking at our spiritual heritage, what has come before us, looking for the patterns that we see in those people, looking for the same patterns that might be in our world and in our own life and heart today, some good and some that may need some adjustment. Last week, Eric began on page 1 of the Bible, and we went from chaos to order back to chaos. The creation of the world, God hovering over the watery chaos and speaking light and life, cultivating a place for all to live and grow, creating order. But then, started out on page 1 and then on page 4, we go off course. Adam and Eve are then exiled from the Garden of Eden. Their children and descendants continue with disastrous life choices. And we ended last week looking at the great-great-great-grandson of Cain. A man named, do you remember his name? Lamech. Lamech, the one who boasted of his own power and extreme violence. And so at one time, Lamech lines up his wives. And in a moment of third-person arrogance, says to them, "You wives of Lamech, listen to what I say. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for striking me. If Cain is avenged sevenfold, then truly Lamech 77-fold. We are far from the order of Eden, far from what was in God's view made good in his eyes. But Lamech, in between his rage and his fury, he fathers a son. And that son's name is Noah. And Lamech says about his son Noah, out of the ground that the Lord has cursed, this one shall bring us relief from the work and from the toil of our hands. But the pattern of violence and death and destruction in the world just rages on until Genesis chapter 6 tells us this. The Lord saw that the wickedness of humankind was great in the earth, and that every inclination of their thoughts, of their hearts, was only evil continuously. And the Lord was sorry that he had made humankind on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out from the earth the human beings I have created, people together with animals and creeping things and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found favor in the sight of the Lord. And by this time, Noah is married. Noah has 3 sons, and those 3 sons have wives. And so Genesis 6 tells us this. God comes to Noah and says, I have determined to make an end of all flesh, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. Now I am going to destroy them along with the earth. Make yourself an ark of cypress wood. Make rooms in the ark and cover it inside and out with pitch. This is how you are to make it. The length of the ark, 300 cubits. Its width, 50 cubits. Its height, 30 cubits. Make a roof for the ark and finish it to the cubit above, and put a door on its side. Make it with a lower, second, and third deck. Remember that last week Eric said that we see these patterns in Scripture over and over of God calling us, our response to that call, God forming us as a person or a people, and then God offering redemption for us all. And so God calls Noah, and Noah responds. God calls Noah and gives him very specific instructions of what to do, and this was to be Noah's part of the flood story. Noah responded to God's asking, to God's calling, and the Scripture says that Noah did every single detail just as prescribed, just as it was commanded for him to do. And so God tells Noah what will happen next. In Genesis 6, this is what he says. This is what God says. For my part, I am going to bring a flood of waters on the earth to destroy from under heaven all flesh, which is the breath of life. Everything that is on the earth shall die, but I will establish my covenant with you. You shall come into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. And of every living thing of all flesh, you shall bring 2 of every kind into the ark to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female, of the birds according to their kinds, and of the animals according to their kinds, and of every creeping thing from the ground according to its kind. 2 of every kind shall come in to you to keep alive. Also take with you every kind of food that is eaten and stored up, and it shall serve as food for you and for them. My favorite part of that scripture right there is when God says to Noah, for my part. God explains what he's going to do. God tells Noah, here's your part. And then, here's my part. Both of them, Noah and God, are faithful to do their parts in this flood story. Can you hear the Sunday school song? The animals, they came on, like Jesus came. It rained and poured for 40 days and days and weeks. The sun came out and dried up the windy rain. God immerses the world. Immerses the world in a reverse of the creation story, taking it back like it was in the very beginning. Like it was when God looked upon the whole earth and said, it is good. He immersed it all under the waters again. The world then itself rises up out of the waters yet again and made good. God makes a promise, a covenant, to never destroy the earth again. And he gives us the sign in the sky as a reminder. But the world and all that is in it begins anew. And Noah and his family begin life after the flood, and almost immediately we see that same old pattern return. A return of self-centeredness, a return of destruction, a return of pattern of cursing one after another. It begins almost instantaneously with one of Noah's sons and continues fully down into all of Noah's descendants. And soon the people desire to do something for themselves, no longer in remembering the covenant, but doing something for ourselves. They want to make a name for themselves. And so they desire to fire and fashion bricks, so that they can build a tower. And not just any tower, but the highest possible tower. A tower as high as they can get it. A tower that reaches way up into the heavens. But because we want all to see how powerful we are to make a name for ourselves. Even after God set that reset button, this is the pattern that emerges again. Self-centeredness death. Self-centeredness death. Over and over. Pre-flood and post-flood. And it's flooded its way all the way into our lives as well. The scriptures give us a litany of the descendants mirroring this pattern, beginning with Adam and Eve and ending Noah. And it's contained these short, sparse obituaries that all end with the phrase, "and he died." I'm not going to read you the entire paragraphs for each of those descendants, but I do want us to hear this death pattern over and over. Each paragraph, each little short obituary contains the name of the person, the children that they had, and how old they were when they died. So I'm going to read just the last sentence, and I want you to help me by saying, "and he died." Here we go. Thus all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. Thus all the days of Seth were 912 years. Thus all the days of Enosh were 950 years. Thus all the days of Kenan were 912 years. Thus all the days of Mahalalel were 895 years. Thus all the days of Jared were 962 years. Enoch walked with God. Then he was no more, because God took him. Enoch is the only exception in this pattern. Thus all the days of Methuselah were 969 years. Thus all the days of Lamech were 777 years. And after the flood, Noah lived 350 years. All the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. And so, what about us? What about the patterns we see? The patterns that we see in these people, the patterns that we see in ourselves now. Before we look too far, let's take a selfie. You ready? Uh-oh. Here we go. Are y'all, crimping starts to look cute? Yes, thank you. All right, here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3. First, we take a selfie before we look too far. Because of all those years lived, those long years of Adam's descendants, our lives can sometimes feel long too, don't they? A lot of times life can be fast-moving and fun, lots of happiness and great, great moments. And then other times it seems like just the opposite. Have you ever had a day that just will not end? Someone said to me last week, said, "Pastor Tracy, I don't even know what the point is anymore. Life can seem so long sometimes." I want us to imagine for a minute that the length of this stage from here to here represents our lifespan. And let's just say it's 100 years, just for easy math. So if this starts over here at 0 and goes all the way to 100, I would say I'm about, right here. I'm 49. So I'm not yet here, right? I'm just right here. Just almost to the exact middle. And so here is what I'm beginning to realize. That if I am lucky, I really am in the middle. But if I take a look more closely at myself, and I look closely at myself and see what has come before me in my own life, if I'm honest, I can see those same Old Testament patterns and habits behind me, from here to here. And I'll tell you what, I don't want to get from here to there, to the end. Whether it's there, or here, I don't want to get to the end and have just that short obituary be part of part of the self-destructive life patterns that are part of all humanity. I don't want these short, sparse paragraph obituary ending with, and she died. I want to show up when God calls. I want to respond. I want to respond in such a way that I offer myself to the Lord as a vessel to be used for life, used in the life of others in the world, not death. I want to do my part because I know that God will do God's part so that my obituary doesn't have to end with, and she died, but instead, and she lived. Oh, I want that. And at some point, we must surrender to God, to be different in that litany of people like Enoch. Enoch walked with God. I want to surrender in such a way that I allow God to do God's part in my heart and in my life. I want it to do that for all of us, to take our lives, to cleanse them in the waters. And for us to come up out of it too, to truly rise and shine, and to truly give God glory by how we live every single second, whether it's to here or to there and all the way in between. Knowing that God will do his part to guide and to form us, to redeem us, when we begin to veer off into that self-destructive tower-building lifestyle. God gave us a reminder in the sky of a rainbow, a reminder of goodness and mercy and forgiveness and grace and love. And we have a similar reminder of his goodness and mercy and grace and love through the waters and the sacrament of baptism, where we are immersed and submerged in that watery grace to rise up and to be made new again. So my friends, what needs to die in each of us, in me, in you? What in each of us needs to go underneath that water to rise up and be made new again? What is it? So that we can be cleansed of our old ways and our old habits and our old patterns. We have a part and God has a part. Our part is we show up to the water and we offer ourselves. Whatever you need of me, Lord. Whatever you need. We surrender to God. We surrender to God knowing and trusting that God will do his part so that we can live lives from whatever point we are on, wherever we are, truly saying, rise and shine and give God the glory. Glory, glory. Is God calling you to the water? And if so, what is God calling you to have immersed in it? What is God calling you to surrender in it? And how will you respond? Let us pray. Oh Lord, we want to respond to you when you call.